I have been in a process where we started to look at a business and we had to report them to HMRC for tax fraud. I know, I've been there. It's easy to start putting expenses through that you can sort of get away with to some degree, but it's not sensible if you think you're going to sell that business in the future.
The best guests on a podcast are those who have achieved immense amounts of success and they're not fussed about people's views on what they say or do. Welcome to the Exiteers podcast.
Hi, good morning. Absolutely delighted to have Andrew with me today. I met Andrew at Ideas Fest. We were on a panel a few weeks back, and I just thought he had exceptional energy and a brilliant story to share about his exit. So, no pressure at all, Andrew, but there's a lot to live up to there, mate.
Absolutely, yeah.
You built and sold an FM company called Pareto, but I certainly won't do it justice, mate. So do you want to do a little bit of background and then we can get into it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was my pink trousers that were giving energy off on the stage on the day. I got a lot of comments about those. Andrew Hulbert, I am 39 now. When I was 27, I founded a facilities management and property services business from my bedroom. I grew that business from literally nothing, and I mean me on my own in a bedroom with a laptop, famously in my pants, as I always talk about, because I had no idea what I was doing on day one, but no backers, no loans, no finances or anything. And we grew that business to a £50 million business over the next 9 years. And we ended with around 500 staff. And in that time, I did 2 private equity exits. So one in 2021, which was about £18 million that we received. And then another one in 2023, which was an undisclosed figure, but significantly more than that. And so for us, I went through the process of being that mad entrepreneur that was at the center of this sort of insane growth that we went through. And just for context, we would have been number 13 on the Sunday Times Fast Track in 2020 had we have applied for it. We applied a year later, we were number 51. But we were one of the fastest growing organizations in the UK, if not the world at that stage. And yes, I've been there, done it, lived it, laughed, cried and bled for the business. So yes, I'm looking forward to a raw discussion today, Rachel, which I think is why we've connected quite well on this sort of stuff. So yeah, that's me.
I totally agree, Andrew. And I think there's tons of podcasts people can listen to if they're looking for that kind of vanilla business advice. The bit that we really try and drill into here is, we really do want to understand that journey and that story and, what went well and what was a bit of a fucking nightmare, but also the emotional impact of building a business, of scaling it as fast as you did. And then I'm right in thinking you'd step back as well from the CEO role as part of that journey. So there's a roller coaster there, mate, and it would be great to dive in. I guess my first question for you, you'd mentioned building this out in the garage, bedroom you used actually, not garage, and being in your pants, which is a phrase I'm familiar with, having run development teams before, and having the up close and personal experience of chatting to them at that time. So where did the motivation come from, mate?
Well, I'm your typical council estate family, working class background. I grew up in an environment where my mum and dad were working their asses off, from the very beginning. My dad was in a factory from the age of 15 until I gave him £250,000 to retire in cash one day, which is a whole different story. And then my mum was in Sainsbury's for 30 years, as well as doing 2 other jobs and raising 3 kids at the same time. So my motivation really came from the fact that I didn't come from money. We worked for everything that we got. And that's an amazing background to have as an entrepreneur because it really drives that hard drive within you. However, I knew that life wasn't for me. I knew from about the age of 15, I didn't want to be working for the rest of my life. And I sort of saw life as this curve that you go to school, maybe go to university or get an apprenticeship or whatever. You go to work for 50 years, you retire, and then you die. And for me, I didn't want that. I wanted to get off that curve as early as possible. look, I'm an upstart entrepreneur that thinks I know better than anybody else. And many people who are entrepreneurs will know exactly what I mean by that. You do it my way or no way. And that's always worked for me. Got me into lots of trouble as well on the way, no doubt about that, and will continue to. So yeah, that was really it. That was my motivation. And look, when I was 15 and starting to sort of mature ever so slightly, I business was the only thing I was good at. I wasn't good at anything else. My grades were terrible in my A levels and around everything else I was doing. So business was the only thing that caught my attention. And I didn't know what business I was going to start. But when I went to university, I ended up randomly in a graduate scheme with a facilities management business, a little one called Rollright, and I just got on well with them. And I saw this sector that, although there's 125,000 suppliers in this sector, I believed I could go in and start a business and do it better. And that's what we were able to prove in the last 10 years or so.
If you're listening to this podcast, you are either a massive fan of mine, and that's fine. Alternatively, you may well be working towards an exit. A lot of the businesses we work with are 5 years out, and there are a number of activities that need to happen to make sure that a founder is extracted from the day-to-day, the processes are in place, there is a robust strategy, and there's repeatable revenue. And we spend all of our time working with founders to make sure this is a reality. The gap between where you are today and being exit ready is where most founders leave a serious amount of cash on the table. If you want to have a chat about planning for an exit, drop me a message at thegrafter.com and mention the Connor brothers, and then I'm going to know that you are an Exiteer pod listener. After all of that hard work you've put in, we want to make damn sure that your exit is one worth talking about.
And I want to go back and pick up at some point the $250,000 to your dad, because I think that's a hell of a story. But I guess my question is that early energy, naivety, arrogance. I understand all of that. They're all traits that I have. I guess, where does that self-belief come from?
Do you know, I've done I sold this business 2 years ago, and I got my beach money, as they say. So I've had a bit of time to decompress since that time. I'm 39 now, and I've spent the last couple of years just thinking, bloody hell, what just happened in the last 10 years? Because honestly, and I mean this, for anyone who goes on a fast growth journey, there are chunks of time I have no memory of, because you are just so focused on the end goal: grow, 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 sell, invest, whatever. I don't really know where the determination comes from, other than just what's happening in here, in your soul and that internal voice that you have. For me, an entrepreneur is somebody that's willing to sacrifice other things that they want to do to aim for a higher goal. And we all have a different goal, right? All my goal ever really was I didn't want to wake up and have to do what someone else was telling me to do. So I didn't want to be somewhere that someone else was telling me, or didn't really want an alarm clock. So for me, I was trying to get to that point in my life where I could do that. I didn't want to necessarily buy a catamaran and go around the Bahamas for the rest of my life. That wasn't what it was about. It was about making choices that I wanted to make on a day-to-day basis. And I think, just if you spoke to my mum, she would say, like, from the age of 12, because we lived in Oxford, we cycled everywhere. So like from the age of 12, I'd cycle. She wouldn't see me for 6-7 hours sometimes, and then we'd come back, and I just had this sort of sense of adventure and independence from a very, very young age. No, this is before, obviously, iPhones and AirTags and everything else that went with it. You just sort of had to trust that the kids would come back at some point. So yeah, for me, I always felt that I was very competent and capable, and that I'd be able to put my mind to something. And I still believe today, if I tried to start another business in something completely different, I would make a success of it. But right now, I'm really focusing on kids. My kids are 4 and 6 now, so that they're a lovely age to spend all the time with that I have. And I don't trust myself that if I start something else, I won't just throw myself into it 100% again. So I'm holding off for the time being.
I'm smiling, Andrew, because you meet a kindred spirit, don't you? And you just know that. Entrepreneurs are often similar in traits, but when we were chatting both at the event and after, I thought, wow, there is a shit ton of similarities between you and I. So I get I get that. So talk us through
Yeah.
the journey then, mate. So you
Yeah.
built Crypto, it's
Yeah.
been built at home,
Yeah.
and then first private equity was
Yeah.
2018, and
2021.
right,
Yeah.
2021, and you get cash in to accelerate the growth of the business. What was that like?
Yeah. Okay. So let me give a bit of context. So look, when I didn't know what private equity was until I was in this sort of growing this business, and when I started Pareto, the previous business I was in, the owners had sold and they made 2 million each, right? And to me, that sounded like wow, that amazing. And look, 2 million is an awful lot of money. But by the way, once you paid off your mortgage and you're giving your mum some and you bought a car and maybe you bought your kids a house or whatever, not that much left over from there. It's not enough to go and retire on for the rest of your life. So we were growing and growing this business, and it got to about nearly 20 million turnover roughly. And we thought, oh, we'll go out to the market and just see what it's worth because we had no idea what was going on at that stage. And then we were introduced to the world of private equity, and the corporate advisors that we used, which was Quantuma at the time, they went out and they said, look, we think you've got a great business here. There's going to be some interest in it. And we didn't know whether we'd sell it to a big company or whether we get investment, whatever. The famous story I tell a lot is that I went to bed one night and I thought we were going to get offers around 6 million, around that's what we thought it was worth, and the offers were 14 to 20 million that came in, and there were 8 offers for the business. And I never forget going to bed that night, reading it, just going, shit, what? How have we got this so wrong on our side? We're so far away. And for anyone that understands corporate advisor ratchets, we really got done over on the ratchet because we thought the business was worth a lot lower than it was. And the corporate advisors made a great return because I think if they sold it for more than 10, then that's when their ratchet started and the little bonus that they got on the top. So, hey, well done to Quantuma for the deal that they did on that one. That's the very easy story. We took a deal with NVM, which was a mid-market Reading-based private equity. Great guys. That they offered 18 million, which we took. Look, I'll go into some detail, but things like free cash, we had about 3 or 4 million of free cash at the time, which we could release through the deal as well. And this is my first deal, so I was on entrepreneurs relief as well for the first million that we took. So, like, crikey, I paid 10% tax on that first million and then 20% on the rest. So, like, the numbers are phenomenal in terms of what you're able to achieve. Now, that's all lovely and sounds very straightforward and simple and everything, but crikey, going through a private equity due diligence process, the piece of advice I give the most is you are not ready until you've been through it and you understand what they're going to ask, because they have very expensive people that are going to come in and ask you more questions about your business than you ever thought was possible. And also, as an entrepreneur, you know the fragilities of your business. You're the most critical person of your whole business out of everybody because you know it in your heart where the problems are. And they're going to find them, and you're going to have to explain them to somebody, and you're going to have to go through hours and hours and days of financial due diligence and remodeling and cash flow forecasting and balance sheet shit. But honestly, that first deal we did was about 3 months of due diligence, and it was a hard yard, predominantly because I didn't tell anybody it was happening. So just me and one other guy that was the CFO, and we did it between us. And I mean, I'll come on to the next deal where we didn't do that. But yeah, that was my early experience. And I wouldn't recommend that because it was hard work.
I remember selling the second business, and it wasn't PE, but it was to a listed firm. And I remember thinking, I think I did a LinkedIn post where I basically said, I understand my business in a way that I've never understood it before. And it was
Yes.
like an MBA on roids for me, because of course they're not looking at it through a rose tinted, oh, this is amazing. I love the people. We're doing some amazing stuff. It's all about impact. It was finance, finance, finance. And it was every different, angle and variable. And I guess what you're saying there is, you'd done that with one other individual. So would some additional advice and support around you have helped with that process?
Yeah, the advice I wish I'd have had then, I wish I would have spoken to someone that had been through a process before so I could just be prepped for what I was about to hit. And then also, I would have widened the net of people that knew, because then they can help you to do all these due diligences and start batting them back. because remember, you're still growing a business. We were still growing at like 30% that year whilst we were doing the process at the same time and coming out the back of COVID. It was an incredibly busy time, and my daughter was born. So it was like all these things happening at the same time and really conflicting reasons that you needed to do things. So yeah, for me, the advice is widen the net, open your trust circle a bit to make sure that people are going to support and be part of it. But also real basic things. And I've been fortunate enough now, I work on the acquisition side now. So in terms of acquiring other businesses, don't do stupid shit in your finances, like put your wife on the payroll, but she doesn't actually work there, or put all your mobile phones through it, or put a car through it that your son uses or something. Like, just try and make sure you run a good business in a good way where you're not having to answer difficult questions. I have been in a process where we started to look at a business and we had to report them to HMRC for tax fraud. It's that sort of thing. You just have to be quite sensible about how you run a business. And I know I've been there. It's easy to start putting expenses through that you can sort of get away with to some degree, but it's not sensible if you think you're going to sell that business in the future. And for me, my integrity and my financial integrity is one of like my just absolute cornerstones of my person. And so for us, that wasn't a problem, but I've seen it on the other side, and you have to be careful with that.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. And the partner on the business is one of the most regular things we see. And when we're talking to entrepreneurs about, having a business clean and tidy, there's almost a surprise when you say, what's she doing on here, or he, what role are they playing? And people are like, what are you talking about? And the other favorite we hear a lot is, I took the dividends out because I want to pay down the mortgage. I'm like, hold on, I thought you wanted to sell the business. So yeah, it's interesting that. First round, I guess my question actually on PE. Well, PE gets a bad rap, in my opinion, and it sounds like it was a super smart move for you guys, and they were a cracking outfit.
Yeah. Well, yeah, look, I can talk about PE generically. If I just continue the story a bit, it will help. We then, private equity came in, so NVM, and we then went on a journey where we grew the business from roughly 20 million turnover to 45 odd million turnover in 2.5 years. And we brought the EBITDA with it whilst we had that growth. Now, the reason that happened was the investors encouraged us to invest £1 million into our overhead so that we could supercharge growth and get ready for the future. Now, we didn't know whether we were on a 3-year, 5-year, 7-year strategy. We didn't know because we were just sort of going through this rapid growth still. But without the investors, I never would have put £1 million into overhead. I still can't quite believe that we did it, because as an entrepreneur, you're very careful about your overhead costs and what you're doing with it. But look, that supercharged us. And we went through this mad 2.5-year journey backed by the investors, with me still leading. And then we managed to get another private equity exit 2.5 years later. And that gave a 4.2 times return to the investors for what they put in. So 420% return on your money in 2.5 years, which will be no surprise is a case study on their website. And you can go and see me doing a video on that on NVM's website. We also created a 20% sweet equity pot at the time for the team as well. So we took this team of about 15, 17 senior leaders with us, who also, got to release some of their funds through the private equity, sweet equity deal that they had as well. So that took us up to 2023. Now, in the process of doing that, I also stepped back before we sold to the next private equity, because I knew I wasn't going to be running at this pace of 1,000 miles an hour forever. And my son had then been born, so I now have 2 kids, and I'd been at home a bit more because of COVID, and it sort of completely changed my vision on what success in life was. And I wasn't around for my daughter much when she was born, but then when I had the 2 kids and I'd been at home, the biology in me was pulling me towards the kids. And I'm so proud that I was able to change my mindset around that, because now I love it, and it's like my number one thing. So we then had to go through the process in that 2.5 years, when we're growing incredibly quickly as well, of hiring a new board, including a new CEO, and me being comfortable to step back. and we got a new chief operating officer and finance director and everything to prepare a board that was going to be able to go into the next sale, deliver what we needed them, and deliver beyond. And that's really what we were able to do. So we went out to the market and we managed to find a CEO that was almost as good as Andrew, but never quite going to be as good as Andrew, of course.
I was wondering if there was going to. I was wondering if there was going to be a mention.
No, I think the reality is, and I genuinely believe this, entrepreneurs. For me as an entrepreneur, I'm exceptionally good at getting something off the ground, getting people motivated, it growing to a certain size. I am not your guy that is going to take it from 50 million to 150 million, because that's too much detail, too much effort, too much focus. That's not where my skill set is. It's at the earlier stages of that. And the business needed somebody who was an older person that had been doing it for some time, that had experience in growing businesses from 50 to 200 million pounds. And that's what we brought in. And we brought in a guy that had done 11 merger and acquisition deals himself as well. And he was the right fit for where the business was going into the future. And so that worked really well for us and was successful. And we went through that deal. I was fortunate then to make my decent money at that stage. And in total, look, we'd exited for $100 million in total across these two deals. So it was a significant amount of money that was being generated here. And then I was able to take a step back. If I go back to private equity, so I understand why private equity may have a challenging reputation, because they're going to put money in, and then a few years later, they want to take more money out. And it becomes very financially driven. Now, in my experience, when the numbers are good and you're growing, generally they're happy and they'll invest in things and they're happy to go along with what you're saying. When you're not hitting your targets, they're not happy and they want to start asking questions. And the challenge with private equity, because most of them have been to like Cambridge University and then been to Ernst & Young or something afterwards, they're exceptionally detailed and they will go into a level of detail that you didn't even know was possible again and start asking lots of difficult questions. So I think for me, if you are ever preparing a financial budget for the future that you are selling to private equity, make sure it's accurate. Make sure you think you can hit it, because there's no point saying you're going to triple sales next year and then you don't, because then you're really going to have a lot of challenging questions and your relationships might not be so powerful afterwards. But the other part of private equity, just for people to be aware, so I sold my original stake, but then in round 2, they gave me back a chunk of the business, and it was a good chunk. I then sold that stake in round 2, and now they've given me back a chunk of the business again. And when Pareto sells again in the future, I will sell that chunk. And look, the reality is I may make more money in that third sale than I did in the first 2 combined. So like private equity almost enables you to keep selling the same shares over and over again. And each time it may be more, it may be less. It depends obviously what happens within the business. And obviously when you're CEO, you've got much more control of the value of those shares. I'm in a fortunate position now where I've made the money that I needed to in life, and I'm happy where I am, and I live a wonderful life now. But look, of course, if someone's going to come and offer you a load more millions again in the future because you have a percentage of the business, then of course that's a brilliant thing. So yeah, private equity, I think if you get it right, can be very lucrative for entrepreneurs, and also can bring people on the journey and create lots of sweet equity opportunities for people to come on the journey as well.
I really appreciate you sharing that view. I mean, I haven't sold to PE, and they notoriously seem to get a bad rep. But the explanation you provided is pretty damn logical. They're putting money in, they're expecting a return, and they're not expecting Fantasy Island along the way, which seems kind of fair. But the bit that really stood out to me there was that million on the overhead, and probably because, as I've already said, similarities I think with you and I in approach. So as a bootstrapped entrepreneur, the thought of ploughing $1 million in psychologically, but it's the ultimate growth accelerator, isn't it? That's what you guys found.
Yeah, and it was because we accelerated in the growth engine. Because look, the harsh reality was for the first 6 years, I did all the sales. I did everything, finding them, writing the tender process, pricing them, doing the pitches, delivering them afterwards. And look, I sold £250 million of services and delivered them in that time. That's the cumulative number.
Wow.
So we weren't selling stuff and then not delivering it. We were selling it and then delivering it and then continuing to grow at the same time. So like yes, I was a good salesman within that scenario, but also we were going on a journey. We were taking customers on this journey that the sector hadn't really seen, this modern, younger, ESG-led approach to services before. And I go back to my roots because I saw my mum and dad working on relatively low wages. You know, they weren't treated badly, but they weren't treated particularly well by the organizations they were working for. They were just numbers. They were just people that worked there, and that was it. So I wanted to sort of say to the sector in facilities management, which often has low wage workers within it, that we should treat people like rock stars, that they're the heart of what we do, and let's really put them back at it. And when the customer, it's a highly fragmented market, when the customer has so many options, you just have to try and differentiate yourself in a way that's authentic. And I could sell ESG because it's true that those values to me are very, very real, and I'm incredibly tolerant and open, and I want to embrace different cultures and inclusivity and everything that comes with it. And the charity work that I do is mainly based around that. But look, being a straight white middle-aged millionaire now is difficult for me to preach on that side of things. But it is, I can't help my characteristics, right? We are what we are, so that's it.
Yeah, wholeheartedly agree. So that journey then, Andrew, so bootstrapped to $100 million
$100 million, yeah.
at period of time. What did you, I mean, you got the party started, and that's an unbelievable achievement. And I guess my question is, what went in initially to see the build of that company versus what came out? You've talked about multiples for PE firms and other bits, but for you personally, what was, I'm not asking you to declare exact numbers, but what was that multiple looking like for you?
No, well, look, unfortunately on the second deal, I can't disclose that. It's an undisclosed deal, but look, it's significant numbers that are well into 8 figures in terms of personal wealth, in terms of what I'm doing, where I am. But look, what went into it realistically was sacrifice. I think, like I said, with entrepreneurs at the start, I just threw myself into it. And when I started, I had a conversation with myself, which really was, because look, I was married, I had a house, I had a mortgage for the first time. I didn't have any kids to start with. And I said to myself, look, if it all goes wrong, you lose your house, you lose your money, you lose your marriage, and you go back to your mum and dad's house and start in your bedroom again and do it all again. A bit like the Simon Cowell effect, as they talk about. However true that story is, I don't know. But the sacrifice really, when I got out the other end, my marriage was intact, just about, and my wife had been incredibly tolerant through that time. My relationship with my children needed to be worked on because I hadn't been there enough and I hadn't prioritized enough, but that's really what I've been focusing on. And my friends. The friends are the easiest ones to neglect, because when they say on a Friday, hey, come to London, we're having a house party. No, I can't. Come into a stag do. Sorry, I can't. Come to whatever. It was always no. And the good thing about boys is we're so emotionally detached that we sort of forget about we haven't seen our mates for 5 years. And then when I call them up and say, hey, let's go on holiday next week, generally I can get them to say yes. So I've been working really hard on my relationships with friends again. I've just come back from Naples and Rome with 4 of my mates, just sort of getting on the train, having a beer. We've all got kids now, so everybody's got responsibilities, and just enjoying that part of it. And if I can, just the other bit for me that I got out of this was when I made my first few million through the first deal, I didn't go and buy a sports car. I bought my mum and dad their house. I bought my 2 sisters their houses as well. I went on my quad bike to the bank and I took out £250,000 in cash, which they were really unhappy about, by the way. If anyone's ever tried to take out £250,000 in cash, especially on a quad bike with a backpack and a pair of flip-flops.
Andrew, there better be a photo of you on that quad bike.
Well, I've got, yeah.
I'd like that when we release this episode.
And I drove to my mum and dad's house and I put this £250,000 in a Sainsbury's bag. It was just loose notes, 50s and 20s. And I got my dad a retirement card and I went round to the house and I gave him this retirement card and he opened it and he's like, what the bloody hell's this? And I'd done a calculation inside around exactly how much money he would need to retire now. And then my mum sort of started crying because she saw the card and realised what was going on. And I tipped this £250,000 all over the floor in the living room. The photos I do have is of my dad laid across the floor with these stacks of 50s all next to him saying, how are we going to get this back into the bank is what he was saying on that. But yeah,
I absolutely love that story. What an incredible story, but also what an incredible way of returning the favor. I mean,
yeah,
that's
yeah.
that's a real testament to you. And how have you found it, kind of
Yeah,
emotionally? You know,
yeah.
that you've mentioned there's been a couple of sales of the business. How did you find it stepping down as CEO? How did you find the exit?
Stepping down as CEO, when I felt we found the right person that had the credentials to do a great job, I was comfortable with it. But look, again, entrepreneurs will know what I mean. I'm a control freak. I want everything to be done my way, and that is difficult to deal with. The reality, how I had to deal with it, I just had to step away. I had to just let him get on with it. And almost what I didn't know was better for me at that stage, because if I knew stuff was happening, I'd have an opinion on it, and then I'd want to try and get involved and change it. So for me, that was the best thing to do. Employ someone you trust, let them get on with it, and run through the process. And that worked for us. Stepping away after the deal, when I did the first round of private equity, I felt a bit guilty because I'd made all these millions, and yes, I'd done some nice things for my family with it, but a lot of the team hadn't made any money at that stage because there weren't shares. So when we created the sweet equity pot, after the first deal and before the second one, on the second deal, I felt much more comfortable because they all made a load of money as well, because there were millions flying around in sweet equity at that stage. So I felt I could run off into the sunset, having helped those that had been on this journey with me. And that was a deep thing for me. And after the deal was done, I took them all to Paris, and we went and got pissed for a couple of days in Paris. And it was just like, hey, thanks so much for doing this for me. And they were like, no, thanks for doing this for us. You know, it's a very mutual sort of like respect in terms of what had happened. And now today, you know, I've stepped back. I'm still non-exec with Pareto. I'm still a 7% shareholder today. So I support the board in a non-exec capacity. But life now is about family. It's about doing the mundane stuff like the school run and going swimming with the kids. I bought a farm. That was what I did with my second amount of money. So I now go out on the quad bike and pick some fruit, and we make jam and bread together and all that quintessentially English shit that people do. But yeah, that's my life now. And I get to choose daily what I'm involved in and what I'm not. Now, look, I'm still busy because there's 1,000 things going on that I'm involved in, and I'm still enjoying doing stuff. I also am chair of the Institute of Workplace now as a volunteer, which I've been involved with for my whole career. And yeah, so I get to sit at the top of the sector. I'm doing a keynote tomorrow in front of 1,000 people at the Grosvenor Hotel. So these things, they make me feel very positive. And I think that the other thing I always just mention is I'm one of the biggest blood donors in the world now. So I'm in the top 0.1% of blood donors globally. I donate every couple of weeks, saved well over 1,000 lives now. And I'm just trying to leave these sort of nice nuggets of legacy that when the kids look me up in the future, they and you know, who knows when we go, right? That's the other thing. I'm very aware that right now everyone who I want to be here is here, including me. And one day that might not be the case, or it won't be the case one day. So I'm trying to make the most of it whilst I can, and use those entrepreneurial traits to try and enjoy life as much as possible in the time that we have. So yeah, that's where I am today.
I absolutely love that. And you'd alluded to the fact the last 18 months have been much more about friends and family.
Yeah.
And do I deduce there's been a bit of a kind of personal journey as well? So understanding Andrew a little better over the last 18 months?
Yeah, absolutely. I've sort of gone back. Honestly, it feels like I'm sort of in my early 20s again mentally, because I'm trying to work it all out again in terms of what does my life now look like. Like I say, I'm 39 and I have enough money now to go for the rest of my life. So now it's about making the right choices and finding out what's important to me. And it's things like, you know, we planted a forest, a virgin forest that we planted that hopefully will grow over the next 100 years. It struggled in the summer because of how dry it was, but and I've just bought a nature reserve on the side of my land as well, which we're extending out into. So there's all these nice things now that we get to do, and I feel very positive about those. But you know what? You don't have to be rich to do these things. It's the power of going round to your mum and dad's house and having a cup of tea and wanting to be there and listening to the stories and taking it in and not being on your phone. The challenge I have for myself, I wasn't always a nice guy when I was going through this with my family. I would be there, but I'd either probably fall asleep on the sofa or on the floor sometimes, or I'd just be on my phone constantly, not in the room. And they really bared with me during that time. And now I like to be present. And, it's, yeah, I feel very, very rich because of that and being able to spend the time and be part of family life. And that's important to me. And that's my community background. And going back all the way back to that sort of council estate originality mentality, it's all about being together in community and eating together and Christmas together and all those wonderful things. So I get to enjoy that now.
And you'd mentioned that you're doing some acquisitions at the minute. Is that part of a kind of acquisition strategy? Is that advisory, or is that things that take your fancy? Are you happy to share a bit about that?
Yeah, so that's predominantly within the facilities management world still. So that is looking at acquisitions. As I mentioned, there are 125,000 service providers in what we do, and there are 93% of those are less than a million. So as a strategy, you can buy less than a million turnover. As a strategy, it's possible to buy these smaller businesses at maybe 4 or 5 times EBITDA. And as a collection, you probably sell it for 15 times EBITDA one day. So that arbitrage, which I only learned that word recently, the arbitrage number of the difference between the EBITDA you buy it on, multiple you buy it on, and the EBITDA multiple you sell it on, is a great way of creating wealth and value within an organization. But you need cash to be able to do that, because obviously just lots of cash and debt and everything that goes with it. It won't be a surprise. I get pitched a lot of businesses now as well for investment. So people chat about investment. I haven't bitten on anything yet. There's some really interesting people out there. There are also people who have absolutely no idea about money, and they ask for huge sums of money, and you just think you are going to burn through that so quickly that nobody is going to give you that. But I'm a nice guy. I'm here to try and mentor and help and sort of offer my opinions on things. But it's really interesting being on the other side, because for a lot of entrepreneurs I meet, I'm where they want to be. So there's a lot of knowledge that we can impart on them to try and help them through the process. And around due diligence, like we mentioned, is one of the most important things to get ready for.
Yeah, I agree. And I often find myself in the same place around the pitching. And the reality for me is I do think, this hard graft needs to happen, doesn't happen by osmosis. And so actually putting a shift in and going through those hard yards is unfortunately or fortunately part of the journey. I mean, the age-old phrase around, things that come to us too quickly, too easily, whatever the stats are around lottery winners, blowing it and, back to the job they were doing before. I mean, there's a reason it's hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there is. And look, my other warning to people is you can go on TikTok or Instagram or YouTube and see 1,000 people that say it was an easy success, and you only see them at the point where they become viral and made a load of money and all that. You just can't. You have to remember there is a starting point that everybody was at where they had nothing and they're trying to work their way through it. And success, there's a phrase, isn't there? It takes 10 years to become an overnight success. And I think that is so true. You probably need 10 years of hard work before you just click and things happen. And even with me now, I'm actively trying to raise my public profile. I haven't done previously. I'm happy to tell the story. I have nothing to sell. I have nothing to promote. I have no book. There's none of that sort of stuff. I just love chatting to people and imparting the story and the wisdom, and just saying that anyone can go on this journey. It's just bloody hard work and a little bit of luck along the way. But the only way you do it is by stepping outside of what you're doing and starting, and then working it out from there. It's not always easy for everybody, but that's literally what you need to do, and just have a lot of belief as well.
Solid, really, really solid advice. And final question, Andrew, is one thing that you haven't shared about this journey over the last couple of years. Are you happy to share a little gem for us?
Yes. What is the gem? Okay, so when I got my second money, when I got my beach money, I went to buy an Aston Martin in bright orange because of the dickhead that I was. And this is only last year, and I went to the showroom, and as I walked in, there was a bright yellow McLaren with the suicide doors up on the side. So I just fuck it, I'm having the McLaren, that's fine. So I bought the McLaren, drove it around, felt like a knobhead for about 6 months, and thought, I can't have this car, and then I sold it again. So it's not all about. I'm very fortunate to have a few nice cars, but nothing as ridiculous as that. I like old school cars is more what I'm about. But yeah, when you drive around in a bright yellow sports car, people stop in the road and take photos, and they're overly interested in what's happening. I much prefer to just be like going through without anybody knowing who I am or whatever is going on with me. I also got pulled over twice by the police. I wasn't even speeding, just got pulled over twice because I assume they thought I looked like a drug dealer, and they pulled me over to see what was going on. And on one occasion, the police pulled me over in Hulbert, and they said they'd been tracking me or something, and they got me and asked me a load of questions, where I got the car from, how I afforded it, etc. And obviously, I was able to answer those questions correctly, but I was in shorts and flip-flops and a hoodie or something, so I didn't look like I necessarily owned the car. And afterwards, they calmed down and they said, okay, yeah, you sound fine, sort of thing. And the police officer said, oh, could I sit in it? I'm still pulled over in Holborn on the side of the road, and he opens the suicide doors and he sits in the passenger seat. And I just like that. It just sums it all up, really.
I think he'd only pulled you over for a selfie, mate. So
I know he probably did. But yeah, that's probably the thing. I sold the sports car now, so that one's gone. It didn't quite work for me.
It's funny, isn't it? Because I think perhaps that was a hark back to 20-year-old Andrew fancied a toy. Similar after I sold the business. It was a Porsche. It lasted 6 months and I got so many points. It was heartbreaking pain to fill the bloody thing up. I thought this needs to go back. So all a learning.
That's my nugget.
And Andrew, if people do want to reach out, how do they find you?
Yeah, LinkedIn is the best place. So LinkedIn/Andrew Hulbert is my handle. So yeah, please drop me a note on there and get in touch.
Brilliant. Andrew, absolutely love your energy, mate. Really, really enjoyed meeting you at Ideas Fest, and really appreciate you taking the time to share your journey and your insights today. So thank you very much.
Rachel, thank you. Exactly the same for you. I think on stage we kept catching each other's eye going, yep, we could really tear this apart. And I tell you, imagine we started a business together, how absolutely it would just be an explosion. I'm not always sure in a good way, but yeah, is there enough room for more than one determined entrepreneur in a room? I don't know, but no, love your energy as well. And thank you so much for the opportunity. I really appreciate your line of questions and everything. So thank you.
Absolute pleasure, mate. Before you go, if you like what you're listening to on the Exiteers podcast, like, review, and subscribe. Is that right? Okay, perfect. Cheers.